Welcome everybody. We're just letting people filter on through. We'll just give it a couple of minutes just so as many people as possible can come in. We'll let the dings ding away. We'll start in about 1 minute. So if anyone needs to grab a quick cup of tea or a glass of water, please do that. And everyone, as you come in, if you could just put yourselves on mute, that would be brilliant. Thank you. Just welcoming everybody coming in. We'll just give it a minute. Just give it 1 more minute.
Lauren, we're actually okay to start at 5 past if we want to give people a few minutes.
Give it 3 minutes. That means you can even go to the loo.
Luxurious with our timings today.
Can even let the dog in the garden. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining. You'll notice that your cameras and mics are automatically off. If you would like to, you should be able to hear Katie. Just saw that question pop up in the chat. Feel free to use the chat to communicate with us throughout. If anyone else can't hear me, if you could pop in the chat, I can see if I can troubleshoot the issue. If it is just 1 or 2 of you rather than the whole group, if you could try leaving the meeting and rejoining, that would be great to resolve any technical issues.
Thanks, Daisy. And we're recording the session today, aren't we, Daisy?
That's right. Session will be recorded and slides will be distributed after the call. If people can hear, if you could give me a thumbs up, you can react using the tools at the top of the screen. Wonderful. Thank you for the thumbs. For anyone who can't hear, please do exit and rejoin. I do feel like turning it on and off again is usually the best way with these things.
We all know that teams can be temperamental at best. Great to see so many people joining us. We're just going to start in a couple of minutes. We're just going to let as many people as possible come in.
Wonderful. We're almost at 5 past, Lauren, so I think we're good to start. I'll keep admitting people as they join.
Thanks, Daisy. Really lovely to have you all with us here today. I'm Lauren Seeger-Smith, CEO of the For Baby's Sake Trust. And our webinar today, we're going to be looking at breaking cycles, brighter futures, supporting parents and young people in care proceedings. And we're really delighted today to be joined by Kirsty Kitchen from Birth Companions, Phoebe White and Helen Perry from NYAS. So you're in really good company. And together what we'll do is we'll share our presentations on our various work in this area, and then there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So as we go through the presentations, please do pop questions in the chat, but we will then address those at the end. And as Daisy said earlier, we are going to record the session as well, so it will be available to watch later. Being a little bit slow, my computer at the moment, so just trying to move to the next slide. There we go. So we always begin all of our sessions at For Baby's Sake Trust just with a little emotional safety check-in. We know that these themes can be distressing and difficult. So do take really good care of yourselves, and it's absolutely okay to pause, to breathe, to step away, to switch off. We've got the cameras off anyway, whatever you need to protect your emotional safety, because your well-being always comes first. So the aims of our session today, Many parents, babies, children, and young people involved in care proceedings have experienced high levels of trauma and adversity, often repeated throughout generations. But through safe multi-agency working, families can be supported to heal, stay safe, and thrive. And in this webinar, we're going to reflect on some of these issues, share learning from organisations that work with families who can be impacted by care proceedings, share our practice insights, and give some thoughts around emerging solutions. You're going to have to forgive me. My computer's being very slow with the slides today.
You didn't give the computer the flapjack, Lauren.
I had a flapjack. The computer didn't have one.
Didn't.
That's fine. There you go. So what are we going to do? We're beginning with the welcome from the For Baby's Sake Trust. Then we're going to have a presentation from Lee Cooper at the For Baby's Sake Trust, one of our wonderful therapeutic practitioners. Then we'll move on to the Birth Companions Institute, then to the work of Project Unity at NYAS, and then that time for Q&A. And as we've said, cameras and mics are turned off, but you can interact in the chat and put your questions in there that we'll address at the end. The webinar is being recorded and it will be distributed after the event. So with no further ado, I'd like to pass over to Lee from For Baby's Sake Trust. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Lauren. If you can put it through to the next slide. And thanks all. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lee Cooper, and as Lauren has said, I'm one of the therapeutic practitioners for Baby's Sake, and I'm going to be taking you through some slides. I'm going to try not to read them word for word where I can, but forgive me if I do allude to it or link to it at times. But between 2010 and 2021, young people aged 16 and above entering care increased by 37%, becoming the fastest growing cohort. Nearly 1 in 4 girls in care became teenage mothers, and 40% of mothers who had had multiple children removed spent time in care themselves, which demonstrates a clear intergenerational cycle. Significantly, 20% of parents we supported through For Baby's Sake were care experienced, with 39% of those having been supported by children's social care as children. Next slide, Lauren, please.
We'll get there, Lee.
So approximately 50,000 babies are referred to children's social care in England each year, with domestic abuse even as a factor, highlighting the enormous scale of the problem and the urgent need for early intervention programs like For Baby's Sake and My Future Me to break intergenerational cycles. You jumped ahead already. You're trying to speed me up, aren't you? For Baby's Sake is a consent-based trauma-informed intervention which was launched in 2015 for expectant parents where domestic abuse is present. It recognises that the perinatal period is both a time of heightened risk and also a crucial window for change. Working within multi-agency safeguarding structures from pregnancy through to for the baby's second birthday. It works with both parents, keeping the baby's safety central while addressing root causes of abuse and helping parents reflect on their own childhoods and motivations. Have we moved forward, Lauren? We have, haven't we? Yeah. So as the working together to safeguard children guidance emphasises, strong multi-agency collaboration is vital for identifying and responding to children and families' needs. We serve as professional lead for teams around the family, or TAFs, what many people know it from, and across different levels of need, and building trusting relationships through consent, information sharing, professional curiosity, and respectful challenge with both multi-agency partners and parents, which is absolutely essential to effective safeguarding. Next slide, thank you very much. So between 20 and 24, For Baby's Sake has achieved remarkable outcomes. 88% of families whose babies turned 1 and had no further domestic, sorry, I'll start again. 88% of families whose babies turned 1 had no further domestic abuse police call-outs in the previous 6 months, and domestic abuse was reduced in 72% of families where physical violence had occurred. I guess perhaps most importantly, 95% of babies achieved or exceeded their 6-month milestones for communication and for emotional and social development, while 96% of these babies had received support from children's social care, reduced to 38% by exit from For Baby's Sake or by the end of June 2025. Next slide, please. So breaking cycle, the 2019 National Commission on Domestic and Sexual Violence and Multiple Disadvantage concluded that survivors urgently need trauma-informed support to break traumatic cycles. This speaks of one mother who powerfully captured this when she said that she didn't want her girls to grow up repeating the same patterns. And she went on to ask herself, what am I doing? Am I going to bring these children up in the same way that I was brought up? This highlights the deep motivation parents have to break intergenerational cycles. Next slide, please. My Future Me. So this is a 6-month therapeutic program specifically designed for care experienced young people, with support continuing for up to 6 months more. This offers individualized support that addresses the unique challenges they face around relationships, emotional well-being and trauma. But what makes this particularly powerful is that young people with lived experience have shaped every aspect of this program, ensuring the support genuinely reflects what they need, whether that's building healthy relationships now or for preparing for parenting in the future. Next slide, please. A little bit more on My Future Me. Young people aged 16 to 25 with care experience have been central to developing the new program My Future Me. It's identifying the relationship skills they most wanted to learn, and their input has shaped the program content to cover everything from, I don't know, from understanding emotions and how relationships evolve over time, to knowing your role in a relationship, setting boundaries, learning from relationships that have gone wrong, dealing with jealousy, recognizing manipulation and exploitation, and of course accepting that you can't change another person, ensuring the program addresses the real issues that these young people face in their relationships. Next slide, please. This visual shows how the two programs work together to break intergenerational cycles at different intervention points. For Baby's Sake works with expectant co-parents from pregnancy until the baby turns 2. Though it's a later intervention for the parents, it provides early intervention for the baby. And in contrast, the My Future Me program intervenes even earlier, working with care experienced young people often before pregnancy, exploring early intervention before their pregnancy to prevent cycles from continuing into the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. And now we're going to invite Kirsty to come and talk to us from the Birth Companions Institute.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lauren, and thank you, Lee. We're really excited by what My Future Me looks like and will do in coming years. So thanks for sharing that. I hope you can hear me okay. And yeah, Lauren, if you're happy to move on to the next slide. So thanks for inviting me to share this space today. For those of you who don't know us, Birth Companions is a UK charity. We're focused in England, but we do have good links with partners in Wales and in Scotland and in Northern Ireland. And our focus is on achieving better care, equity and justice for pregnant women, mothers and their babies. And like For Baby's Sake Trust, we have a focus on the first 1001 days from the point of conception up to a child's second birthday. We specialise in how those 1001 days are navigated amidst women's contact with the health, criminal justice, social care and immigration systems. And there are 3 parts to our work. There's our frontline services, which work with women individually and in specialist groups in their homes, in their communities, and in several women's prisons. There's our amazing lived experience programme, which has around 60 women as part of it. We use a trauma-informed engagement model to centre the voices of women who've been through our services and the services of others in creating change. And anyone that's interested in the lived experience programme or in our training on our trauma-informed engagement model, there's more information on our website about that. And then thirdly, there's the Birth Companions Institute, which I lead, which is our centre of excellence for research, campaigning and influencing to shape policy and practice the legal structures and the systems that have an impact on women and babies who face disadvantage and discrimination around the country. I'm going to use my part of today's session to talk briefly about the need for tailored support around women who have social care involvement in the first 1001 days, but building very much on what Lee has said, some recent research in this area and the work that we're doing at the moment to develop a more coordinated, consistent and compassionate approach to care. Thank you, Lauren. Marvellous. Moving on to the next slide. So we run a service in Hackney in East London called the Izzy Project. I'm delighted to see one of our coordinators for Izzy on the call today with us. This is a system focused service that has a sort of emphasis on women who have children's social care involvement, and we co-designed it with women who have lived experience of that involvement pre-birth and in infancy, and with a huge number of local stakeholders. We're 2 years into the Izzy Project's 4-year pilot. Many of the women who come to the Izzy Project, which runs alongside but independently of maternity services and the pre-birth and infant social care team, are themselves care experienced. We see that a lot. The Izzy Project adopts a sort of navigator approach. So we have dedicated staff walking the journey with women through pregnancy into early motherhood, helping them understand the processes that are involved, engage fully with health and social care services and wider provision, and maintain a holistic, continuous and critically a compassionate package of support, regardless of whether they go on to retain the care of their baby or not. So the service is built around providing practical and emotional support and information. Though interestingly, someone recently said to me, which I completely agree with, that practical support in many cases is emotional support. The two things are not distinct from each other, which I'm going to take forward with me from here on in. So since Izzy was established, we've seen increasingly effective collaboration and information sharing between health and social care practitioners, and that was part of the intention of Izzy, as well as working directly to support the women. We wanted to reshape the systems and the services around them. It's not all plain sailing, of course. So we also see best laid plans falling apart. Sometimes we see particularly systemic challenges playing out. We see late notice hearings being held for women very close to the point of birth. And I will put a link in the chat later on. Anyone who hasn't seen it already, there is a consultation out at the moment from the family executive team on a newborn baby protocol designed to massively reduce the number of short notice and urgent care hearings in the newborn phase, which is really positive. We see issues connecting care up across borough boundaries, because the Izzy Project is based in one borough of London. Services and lives don't work in neat borough kind of packages. And we see many of the women who we are working with navigating, for instance, things like learning disabilities or difficulties, sometimes with a diagnosis, sometimes without a diagnosis. It's also really hard to ask women to engage with yet another service. I'm sure this is familiar to many on the call. We have to do a huge amount of work to establish trust and give a really clear reason for forging a kind of fresh connection with another group of people. And it's a leap to make. We really respect that. And that can be particularly true, I think, for those who have been in the care system themselves, who have often a very low level of trust in services, whether those are statutory services or, like us, voluntary sector services. It's not an insignificant ask to forge that another new connection, as I said. The ISTE project isn't the only birth companion service that sees care experienced young women and girls. As I mentioned, we work in women's prisons and run a service as well for women who are under probation supervision while serving community sentences or after leaving prison. We know that many of those women have been in care as children. It's around a third of women who enter the prison system who have care experience themselves. And dual contact is a really key concern of ours. So that's women's contact with both the criminal justice system and the children's social care system at the same time for their children. It's a really under-recognised but hugely common and hugely impactful kind of overlap. And the drivers for contact with those two systems, criminal justice and children's social care, are incredibly similar. As Lee said, domestic abuse, unmet mental health need, substance use, insecure housing, poverty, they're the same drivers for offending and for children's social care concerns. There's no robust data yet on the number of women who have contact with, say, the police or are in prison or under probation supervision while also having contact with children's social care, whether that's early help type services or active care proceedings or assessment, for instance. But we know that number is incredibly high. It will be very high. And we're part of a big project with Lancaster University and the Ministry of Justice that's just getting underway at the moment to explore that data around that overlap. We've also published a paper, which you can see on this slide, and I will put a link in the chat later on dual contact if you want to think about that a little bit more. But one of the starkest demonstrations of dual contact for me can be read in the inquest into the death of baby Aisha Cleary back in 2019. The inquest was 2023, I think. And her mother, Rihanna, was in and out of care throughout her childhood, experienced a lot of abuse as a child and as an adult. She was in the process of transitioning from child to adult services herself when she entered prison on remand, and there was a dispute running at the time between two local authorities as to whose care she was under while she was transitioning. She didn't have a principal. She didn't have a personal advisor appointed when she entered prison yet, and she was told, without any sort of real evidence of care or compassion, of the plans to remove her baby at the point of birth. And she described in her statement to the court in the coroner's inquest that everyone was making decisions without her being involved, that no one was on her side, and that she had been told by someone that she would get 5 minutes with her baby before the police took her away. And yet, despite all of that, which is, obviously very difficult to hear and to think about, and despite it clearly having an impact on how Rihanna felt about engaging with services around her in her pregnancy, when she went into labour in her prison cell, she did call for help immediately. She did press her buzzer multiple times, and no one came, and she delivered baby Aisha alone in her cell, and baby Aisha died as a result. And then I think if we think about the recent serious case review of baby Victoria Martin, on the other hand, her mother, Constance, isn't care experienced, didn't have that experience as a child, but that case review, which is so important, shows that all too often parents who are subject to children's care proceedings and those who have had a baby removed or a child removed previously don't have the support to process their trauma, their grief, or the practical support to address their needs around housing, for instance. And the issue of patchy provision across the country was flagged in that review too. And it really shouldn't be the case that the type of support you get around these experiences is influenced by where you live. It should be influenced only by the needs that you have. So there's no question that there's a need for better and more tailored support, I would say, for girls and young women in and leaving care in England and Wales, despite the best efforts of many. Lauren, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. I mean, I'll touch really briefly on this because Lee did a good job on this as well. There is a lot of research to back this up. There was a recent study by Dr. Kat de Backer that we were involved in out of King's College London that looked at maternity data in South London, and that found that those women who were accessing maternity care who had been in state care themselves as a child were 17 times more likely to have a referral to children's social care during their pregnancy than women who grew up with their parents. Lee's already mentioned the fact that 40% of mothers experiencing recurrent care proceedings had looked after status at some point as a child. And as Karen Broadhurst talks about in that paper, she says this gives us the state an additional moral and ethical responsibility to these parents, because there is that role of corporate parent and corporate grandparent that we shouldn't lose sight of. So the reasons for addressing these cycles of care involvement are many. They are moral, they are definitely economic as well. And the failure to do that, to break those cycles, carries a huge risk, not least because we know that from our recent work with Dr. de Backer and others around the annual maternal mortality data that's published in the Embrace report each year, that a third of the women who die in pregnancy and the year after birth every year have involvement from children's social care. They have care proceedings for that child. And those deaths are predominantly linked to suicide and substance use, and also an overrepresentation of homicide deaths among women who have care proceedings as well, which clearly links into what we know about the prevalence of domestic abuse. So we have to do better for these mothers and their children. And if we move on to my last slide, please. Thank you, Lauren. I just wanted to kind of wrap up by saying that individual services can only do so much to address these needs, particularly where they are focusing in particular parts of the country. So we need systemic change, not just in health and in social care, but across housing, across the family court system, across the criminal justice system and more. And that was the focus of the birth charter that we at Birth Companions published in 2023, and in that we recommended much greater national commitment and coordination around social care involvement in the first 1001 days. And we proposed at that time what was called a national care pathway. It's now called the National Integrated Care Framework, modelled quite closely on the national bereavement care pathway that exists in maternity care, but working across systems. Off the back of that birth charter, we had lots of conversations with people working in national policy teams across DfE, DHSE, NHS, England, Ministry of Justice, and with those who are leading really brilliant work in this space around the country. And I think some of them are on the call. I think I saw colleagues from Sheffield joining earlier, and everyone agreed that while there is good work underway, that more coordinated national approach is so valuable. So we sought the funding to lead the co-design, as we are doing now, of a national care framework to shape this kind of culture and practice differently across all of the systems that are at play in women's and babies' lives, and taking account of other family members, including dads, for instance, as part of a sort of holistic and very personalised view of care. Our colleagues at NYAS and For Baby's Sake Trust are part of that co-design process, as are many others, and we're really grateful for their for their insight. And there's 3 areas that are going to be acting as early adopters to explore how the sort of first version of this framework might look in terms of making sure it can be taken up and implemented at regional and local levels as part of ensuring national coordination and consistency. And we plan to develop really specific work on care experienced girls and young women within the framework and building on top of it as a priority in months and years to come. So yes, I'll hand on to NYAS. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. I'm really pleased to be able to share more about your work, and we've certainly found it hugely valuable being involved in that care framework work, and yeah, really appreciate your work. Welcome Phoebe and Helen, who are going to present now on the work of NYAS and in particular Project Unity.
Hi everybody. First of all, we couldn't be more pleased to be working alongside For Baby's Sake and Birth Companions, and everything you've already heard is so real about what we're experiencing and the young women in Wales are experiencing. So I just wanted to be very clear that this is a very much a national issue. Can I have the next slide, please? So my presentation is going to be quite practical, but I wanted to assure you that the pictures on these presentations are all pictures of young women and staff from Unity who have given permission for those to happen. So I just want to acknowledge that and to say thank you. Can we have the next one, please? So Project Unity actually started as a pilot, which was funded by the tampon tax in 2017, and at the time was only for a very small part of South Wales. It was put in place because NYAS, who many of you will be aware of NYAS being an advocacy organisation, NYAS had been working with a number of young women who were pregnant and recognised that these young women had a need for advocacy, not only for themselves, but for their unborn babies. And they also recognised a need for a wraparound support system that happened with it. That's how Unity came into being. In 2020, Welsh Government picked up the funding for it. And I'd just like to acknowledge at this point that Welsh Government is still funding the project. We're in the 5th year. We're funded out of the Welsh Government Social Services and Sustainability Grant. We work with young women from the youngest we've worked with is 11 up to 25. Each one of those young women receive wraparound intensive and holistic support and advocacy. Every single one of the staff that are working on Unity are trained as advocates, and that is very important in the journey that all of them are experiencing and going forward with. Can I have the next slide, please? When the young women are working with Project Unity, one of the things that we find is that they all have so horrendous situations, as you've already been listening to from Kirsty. I'm just going to highlight just one or two. I'm not going to talk about them all because you can read the slide after. But one of the hardest things that one of our staff ever had to deal with was a young woman who had delivered her baby at nearly close to delivery date, stillborn. She had been offered a place in a mother and baby unit, and all her belongings had been moved to the mother and baby unit, ready for when she came home. After giving birth to the baby, she received a text, not a call, a text, saying that due to the fact she would not be bringing a baby out of the hospital, she no longer had a place in the mother and baby unit. If it wasn't for the fact that the advocate who was working with her had acted very quickly, got in touch with housing, and actually established a place for her to stay. This young woman had no family, no close friends, because one of the things that's very clear with these young women is all of them, having lived at some point in the care system, they've moved around so much, they've got very little community support. And this young woman would have been going home and living on the streets from having delivered a stillborn. This was very distressing, and it was something that we brought to the attention of Welsh Government immediately. We also find that some of the young women that, having given birth to one of their first babies and very much being involved with the care system and often be going through the PLO process, and at a point where baby has been removed from them, they sometimes become pregnant again. At that point, we find many of them choose termination. They've decided, and they're very clear, and the statement said by the young woman is, I don't want to put another one of my babies through the system. That's a very sad situation that these young women are in. They feel that every single pregnancy they have, they're being judged on. One young woman that I personally sat in a child protection meeting with her when they were making a decision as to whether the baby was going to be placed on the child protection register, they actually cited the fact that when she was 12 and 13 years old, she ran away from her foster care placements. And therefore, they were concerned that she wouldn't be consistent with the baby and that she may leave the baby. This young woman was now 21 years of age. As you can tell, some of these things are extremely upsetting, extremely difficult. But these young women are living in these situations every single day. Every one of the young women on Project Unity is care experienced. And what we are finding is that 98% of them actually find their newborn baby on the child protection register. Many of them tell us that they are already told when they attend their midwifery appointment that they will be receiving a referral into child protection. These are the things that we are working hard to change. In order to change those, though, it's going to have to be a national, just like was being spoken about by Lee and Kirsty. Can I have the next slide, please? So how are we going to change this? How are we going to influence this? One of the things that's very important in our work and in what we do every day with the young women is that we consult and collaborate with the girls and the young women, even down to the fact that the Unity logo was designed by them and the name Unity was designed by them. As the project develops, we actually work with the girls alongside them, and they actually have been present many times in the Senate and actually spoken to members of the Senate about their feelings and about what they want to change. We've had a number of times when we've had opportunities to work alongside Cardiff University and Dr. Louise Roberts and Rachel Vaughan. And one of the things that the Unity young women got involved with was the Good Practice Charter for corporate parent. Some of you may have heard of that because I know it's been adopted in England. And just you to know and to acknowledge that the young women from Unity were very much part of that. They've also taken part in research study with Dr. Anne Crowley. They've also been involved with the Children's Commissioner's Office, and they spent we actually have taken them to the Children's Commissioner's Office and had some time when they have the opportunity to feedback on their thoughts about living in the care system, as well about their thoughts about how that has changed and what needs to change. As you can imagine, these young women are very frightened when they come to Unity. They often don't want to engage. They've had bad experiences, and they have often lived in the care system for many, many years. Some of them have moved foster placements up to 16 times and find it really hard to trust. But one of the things that has happened is we've seen huge amounts of change in these young women. Can we have the next slide, please? What we do an awful lot of is actually peer groups, opportunity for these young women to come together and actually realize I'm not different. There's lots of young women like us. During lockdown and during COVID, we used to do these online. And it was really important that we did those online because that gave those young women the opportunity to talk to someone. Some of them were living in hostels and mother and baby units where they weren't seeing anyone at all. The importance of these is to break down their feelings of isolation and build their confidence. We also do a number of workshops, and we also signpost to domestic abuse services, to drug and alcohol services, and we actually work together with those. One of the things that has been very exciting for us is between September and November 24, we spent some time doing some work around focus groups and surveys to understand the impact of Unity it had on their lives. 50 young women across 16 local authorities in Wales responded to these surveys and responded to the youth, and we actually came together into groups. As a result of that, we have now got something called Her Story. Her Story will be launched tomorrow in the Senate. Young women will be there to say their thoughts about what their story is all about. And also, Her Story was named by them. The exciting thing about this is that project, that statement will all go forward for everyone to see. As of Thursday morning, you will be able to see this report on NYAS's website, and I encourage you to take a look at it. And I just wanted to do something before I leave here, because I think the really important thing is, if you can do the next slide, is to actually give you, these are just for, sorry, I missed this one, key partners that we tend to work with. Okay, so when we are working with these young women, they become extremely confident, and it's amazing to see them going from walking into a room where their head is looking down to suddenly looking up and being prepared to speak. 4 young women will be at the Senate tomorrow, and they are so excited to be making their voice heard. And I just wanted to give you a couple of statements from them. Project Unity has helped me immensely. Without them, I probably would have never got my children. I realised I could play a part in society and my voice mattered. Without Project Unity, I would never have known that. Project Unity gave me a voice and an opportunity to have my say while making sure I was okay. Project Unity cared and were there for me every step of the way. I felt reassured that I had someone who was telling me what was going on and why, and what I could do to make things better. Next slide, please. I've just given you my email address on there. If anybody would like to get in touch and find out what we're doing, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So much, and I'm really excited because I'm going to be going to that event tomorrow in the Senate, so can't wait to hear more about it. Brilliant. Helen.
Phoebe.
Phoebe.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Phoebe White, Policy and Influencing Manager at NYAS, and it's been so great to join the sessions today. I'm particularly loving the fact that there are so many people on this call and how many people are kind of engaged and interested in caring about these issues. So yeah, it's really great to see. As Helen mentioned, we have a report coming out this week looking at the impact that Project Unity has had in Wales over the past 5 years. It'll be available on our website Thursday morning. It's a really fantastic report. So yeah, I would recommend everybody having a look at that and having a look at the findings of what we found from the service. What I want to do to kind of finish this part of the session is share what NYAS and Birth Companions are going to be working on over the next year to continue influencing policy on intergenerational cycles of care involvement in England. So as Helena just talked through, our Project Unity service is really well established in Wales, and because of that, at a policy level, Welsh Government are quite engaged and aware of the issues relating to intergenerational care. However, as we know, and we've kind of talked about today, we know this issue of intergenerational care isn't just impacting young women in Wales, and it's something that is a national issue across England and Wales. And while there are some really good pockets of practice across England of organisations working with care experienced mothers, we really do need to see more engagement from UK government to create real policy change. As many of you probably know, the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill is currently going through UK Parliament, and while the bill does have a heavy focus on children's social care, there isn't really anything in it that is specifically looking at this cycle of intergenerational care. So NYAS and Birth Companions, we've kind of been working together for just over a year now, looking at what we can do to kind of create some policy change. So we started all of this work last year. We hosted a roundtable in Parliament, and the aim of this really was to just get this conversation onto government agenda and speak to parliamentarians and kind of let them know what the issues are, what we're seeing in our day-to-day practice and work, and yeah, kind of just get the conversation started on this. The roundtable was really well attended by different government departments, and it was also chaired by Jess Asato MP. Jess, as I'm sure many of you know, she is a really wonderful advocate for women's equality, and she's been so supportive of the work that both NYAS and Birth Companions are doing, which has kind of led us to where we are today. So Jess chairs the all-party parliamentary group for care experienced children and young people, and we've been working with Jess for kind of the last year now, and we're really pleased to say that in January of this year we were able to confirm with the APPG the launch of a new inquiry into breaking intergenerational cycles of care involvement in England, which is going to be led by NYAS and Birth Companions. If you're able to jump to the next slide, please. Thank you. So our inquiry is going to establish a strong cross-governmental and multi-agency focus on the scale and nature of intergenerational cycles of care in England. Our aim of the inquiry is to fill research gaps, collect evidence of good practice, both nationally and internationally, hear from women with lived experience, and ultimately go on to make recommendations for policy change kind of rooted in preventative and early models of support. The way we're going to run the inquiry is in the next couple of months, we're going to be launching a call for written evidence, and then moving on to hosting some oral evidence sessions, both virtually and in Parliament, towards the end of this year, where we're really keen to hear from professionals and women with lived experience to understand what this cycle is kind of looking like for them. With all of that, we then want to produce a report which will be out during next year, and it will go over all the findings that we've collected from this inquiry and then make recommendations to UK government of what needs to change. This is something we're really excited about, and we think this is such a crucial step into making this policy change. There isn't really any policy currently within England around intergenerational care. Practice can be very inconsistent. We've heard stories of some care experienced young women, as soon as it is known to a professional that they are care experienced and pregnant, they will automatically get a referral to child protection. Others don't. Some women can access really good support in their local areas and others can't. There's not even any data collection at a national level on how many women are care experienced and then going on to have babies, and what their interactions with social care services look like. So we feel that this inquiry is going to be a really good starting point to collating all of this to then make recommendations to government. We want to hear from as many people as possible with this inquiry, so please do follow along both NYAS and Birth Companions socials, as we're going to have a lot more information coming out very soon of how you can stay updated with the inquiry, and how you can get involved with it. I've put mine and Kirsty's emails at the bottom of the slides. If you do have any questions in the meantime about the inquiry, please email both of us, and yeah, we'll be happy to answer anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. Really positive news and a step forward. And so please, everybody, do get in touch with Kirsty and Phoebe if you'd like to find out more about that inquiry or feed in your own experience. Right, with no further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll move to a little bit of time for our Q&A.
Thank you so much, everyone, for putting questions in the Q&A function. It's not too late if you have anything to ask our speakers. And it's great to see people connecting in the chat as well. Really heartening to see like how much opportunity there is for collaboration across all of the attendees in this space. So without further ado, I'll run through a couple of the questions that we've got. Terry Ann has asked, I'm really interested to know whether any of the services mentioned support care experienced parents in their 30s and beyond. In my own advocacy work, I often struggle to find services supporting older care experienced parents. Helen, you've got a hand up. Are you happy to jump in and answer the question?
Yeah, I am.
Great.
In response to that, Terry Ann, we actually have a parent advocacy within NYAS, in NYAS Cymru and in NYAS itself. And what the experience of the managers and the teams within that is they work with a lot of older care experienced. It's not specifically for parents who are care experienced, but that seems to be what's coming through. Does that help?
Kirsty, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, similarly from our point of view, the Easy Project does work with older women as well. So it's not specifically for young women and girls. And we certainly, in our other services that are not specific to care experience, do see women who are in their 30s and 40s who do carry that experience with them as well. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's really critical, and we'll take this into account in the inquiry as well, that we look at the sort of whole life course, because we know that it's not just about the transition or the shift into adult services, for instance, or up to 25 or anything like that. This is much bigger than that.
Thank you. Any more, or shall I hop to the next question?
I was just thinking on that actually as well, the emphasis on kinship care now, and the involvement of the wider family is so important when you're looking at the intergenerational experiences of care as well. So maybe think of that, Kirsty.
Thanks, everyone. Jade has asked, I know there is a lack of national data, but I wanted to ask if anybody is collecting data on how many areas are still complete automatic. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I wanted to ask if anybody is collecting data on how many areas still complete automatic pre-birth referrals for care experienced parents. Kirsty, thank you.
Yeah, if anyone knows of that data, then please do share it. But certainly, to my knowledge, no. I think it's ripe for an FOI request, but certainly something exactly the kind of thing that we want the inquiry to shine a spotlight on, because we do know that there are many areas that do have an automatic referral on that basis, and it seems hard to justify when we from what we see about families' capacity to individuals and whole families' capacity engage with services, respond to concerns, and how often, unfortunately, there aren't any other factors at play. So yeah, I think that's really, really important.
Thanks, Kirsty. Phoebe.
Oh, yeah, my mic's off. Thank you. I just wanted to follow on from what Kirsty had said there. And yeah, if anyone does have that information, it would be really helpful to kind of what we're doing with the inquiry. But I also think if you know of any examples where that was the initial practice and actually there has been change and now there's a different approach to working with care experienced mothers, that's something we're really interested to hear about as well. So yeah, anything both where it is an automatic referral and if there is an alternative approach, would be really keen to hear about.
Thank you so much. Great, I'll feed through as many questions as I can, and thank you for submitting them. And if we don't have time to answer them and you'd like to follow up via email, we can absolutely work on that. Claire has asked, what is For Baby's Sake's thoughts as to how the government's reforms around family group decision making could empower young mothers and or care experienced young mothers? Lauren or Lee, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
I'm happy to start and then hand over to you, Lee. I mean, I think it touches on what we were saying earlier around the emphasis on kinship care as well and family group conferencing and like Birth Companions, you know, it's very much about taking a personalised approach and really understanding around what's needed within that family and taking a trauma-informed approach. So you're really looking at safety and you're looking at intergenerational experiences of trauma and abuse within those families. And that has to be so carefully managed. We're working in the space of domestic abuse as well. And so it's not appropriate in all cases at all. And it's being able to do that safely. And so very often the intergenerational piece is missing from that, which is so vital. And just handing over to Lee, that I'm sure has had direct experience in that space.
To be honest with you, I was going to echo everything you've actually said, Lauren. So I don't think there's much more that I can offer there.
I think it goes back to one of the slides that you shared, Helen, as well, where the parents said how painful it was to see their baby with parents that had abused them. And again, I just don't know how much we're really addressing that or looking at that, which is really concerning when you think about that intergenerational trauma piece, and really how much support is put in place for all family members around processing trauma and abuse within the family over generations and what that means. Yeah, I think there's some big questions.
Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I totally agree that what we saw this at the beginning when we were started working in Opportunity, and we saw babies being removed from young women who had been in the care system and given to their mothers who they'd been removed from, and then they weren't able to have access to their babies. We've raised this a number of times because we give regular reports to Welsh Government and nothing has changed. We're 5 years on and we are still seeing babies removed from their mothers and placed with their grandmothers, who in the first instance would have been the ones the child was removed from. And no one's addressing it.
Thanks, Helen. I'm going to squeeze in one more question, which I think everyone in the speaker lineup could give an answer to. And apologies to anyone's questions that we haven't got to. But Maria has asked, what strategies have you found helpful when working with families who may feel hesitant or wary of services?
Will I start?
Go ahead, Lee.
The thing that comes to my mind in the immediate sense is trust, building that trusting relationship, non-judgmental approach to working with the families, and also the trauma-informed work that we do from the outset. It helps develop that trust and building that relationship. For Baby's Sake, are very lucky in terms of the time that we get to work with the families following the 1001 days. So we have that capacity to build that trust in the first instance. But yeah, my experience is just building trust and being non-judgmental from the outset.
Thank you, Lee. Kirsty.
I would just add to that with something that we've definitely seen across our services, but particularly strongly in the ISI project, is the importance of keeping the door open. You know, asking once and then taking a no and then shutting the door is just perpetuating something that so many women and girls have sort of experienced before. And it's, I don't know, it's certainly something that we don't do in our services, and I know, you know, others on this call won't do in their services, but we do see services doing it. They sort of say, well, we made the offer, you said no, and so the chance is gone, we'll move on to someone else. And it's hard from a service planning point of view, but keeping the door open is just so crucial, because in a few weeks, a few months, that woman might be in a place where she can say yes.
Thanks so much, Kirsty. And I think as well that the importance of specialist services working alongside statutory agencies in terms of building trust for very good reasons, particularly people who've been through the care system. There can be a lot of distrust when it comes to social workers and other frontline services, and being able to be there alongside those services can really help to break down some of those barriers and some of that shame and stigma. And we've touched on ways you're then able to work within that multi-agency framework, but really add that value. But it comes with funding and the call for funding, and which is true for all organisations represented here. Just a huge thank you for everybody that attended today. It's been, you know, I hope you found it really helpful and insightful. And I know there'll be lots of people here as well, and making comments in the chat, who are also working in this space, and we really value you. And so please do stay in contact with NYAS, with Birth Companions, with the Baby Sake Trust. It takes time sometimes for us even to find each other, and we're so much stronger together around supporting these families who've been in contact with children's social care. So stay in touch with all of the charities, follow us and look to engage in the inquiry, and any other ways we can really join our voices together to make sure that we're advocating for these women, for these men, for these girls, and for these boys, because we're so much stronger together. So thank you so much to all of you. We'll share the recording shortly. Huge thank you to all of our guests.